what I want to do starting out in this video, and this is going to be kind of a long video, but I haven't planned for this video. I'm just going to kind of wing it when I go through these names and explain the connections, so it might be long and drawn out. We'll start out with, on this list, I don't know what the best place to start would be, but given that my story, if you follow the story, if you follow the timeline of the 8-part series, you're going to notice that it starts with Eazy-E and the founding of Death Row, and it starts with really Suge's early career, but mainly it looks at starting with Eazy-E and Ruthless Records. Founding of Eazy-E and Ruthless Records, because if you look at the NWA era, that was kind of where this gangster rap got started, and where really you could say that rap music blew up to the extent that it reached in the 90s, to the extent to where it later on became basically popular music. If you want to look at like the 2000s and later, to where it's basically rap has become like a pop type music now, you know. So we'll start with Eazy-E and Jerry Heller. And the Jerry Heller thing is kind of, in a way, he has connections to a lot of these other guys. If you want to look at from underneath the Warner, you'll see Mo Austin or Irving Azoff. If you read Jerry Heller's book or listen to his interviews, you'll notice a mention of people like this, because Jerry Heller was in the game for a long time, and he had relationships with a lot of these other people that ended up big head executives of particular like either divisions or their own record labels, or big, what they call like the big three record labels, which ended up by the end of the 90s kind of consolidating into a big three, and now we consider it a big three, which is Sony, Warner, and MCA, which turned into Universal. And that's also important when you look at it from that perspective, because one thing that you'll notice throughout the 90s is that Warner was the big, and when you look at the gangster rap controversy, Warner was the big one back then. They had the big stake in a lot of different companies. They were the original ones that were behind Interscope as far as a half and half. Yeah, Warner was the big ones, you know, as far as, you know, Death Row. They were behind Death Row. And basically the other labels at that time, a part of the gangster rap controversy, basically started chipping away at some of the assets of Warner. I mean, I guess that's why that's important, because eventually what you're going to see happen was that, for example, Sony, Tommy Mottola, actually go after Dr. Dre first off, and eventually Universal get Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre is basically one of the key assets in this situation. I'm going to start in the middle. Mo Austin and Irving Azoff were at Warner during the late 80s. Irving Azoff eventually went, Irving Azoff actually might have been at MCA, but then eventually he went to Warner and did Giant Records, which is kind of important because later on they did the deal with Above the Law after they were dropped by Sony, because Dr. Dre wasn't producing their album. See, Sony was already eyeing Dr. Dre. Okay, they were already eyeing Dr. Dre because they knew how much of an asset he was. So when Suge Knight came in, this was all, I mean, I can't say it was like well planned out, deliberate, but Suge probably, to an extent, I don't know if he knew he was being used as much as he was being used, but he had to know that there was dirt going on. Okay, so you see Tommy Mottola and Hank Caldwell, they were actually the original ones that Jerry and Eazy were working to deal with. If you know the situation where Jerry and Eazy were, apparently they showed in a movie where he was getting beat up, where Eazy got beat up and had to sign over the contract, which in real life he was just threatened, and basically he signed over Dr. Dre, but then eventually he came with a lawsuit, and that lawsuit, his RICO federal lawsuit, eventually ended up what caused like the heat and for Sony to actually just kind of step back, and that's what allowed Interscope to come in. But Dick Griffey and Virgil Roberts were on Solar Records. Solar Records had a deal with Sony. Okay, so that's that connection. Suge was actually, if you go back, he kind of was doing that bodyguard and stuff. That's actually how he came up into the industry, right? Was through the bodyguarding stuff. If you look at the middle where you see Big West Crocker, he was a bodyguard. Okay, Dick Griffey owned clubs. Al Heyman was a promoter and did them shows. Like if you look at the Budweiser Superfest, Al Heyman was doing that before he started doing the boxing stuff. Later on, he was doing these Budweiser Superfest shows. That's where Suge met Bobby Brown. That's where he ended up getting into the industry. That way through through bodyguard. And they called him a bodyguard, but he really had his mindset really obviously on what he did. So, Suge, okay, knows Dick Griffey through doing this bodyguard and stuff, probably through Al Heyman and stuff like that. When he goes in and starts doing his record label stuff more seriously, this would have been after, I think he did like a little thing, which Mob James mentions in a live interview about like Fernhill Records or something like that with some other Klein guy or whatever. But when he started getting into this stuff with like chocolate, and you know they had the incident where they said Vanilla Ice got hung off the balcony, but really, you know, Suge just went in there and was like basically signed over with Virgil Roberts, who was the lawyer and president, and Dick Griffey on Solar was the ones that for Sony that was actually working out these type of these deals for the publishing and stuff like that. Originally, what Suge had was a publishing company and artist management. That's what he was doing. That's what his thing. That's where he was going to make money in the industry. It was really certain people pulling at him. Dick Griffey originally, and then David Kenner when Harry O comes through. They're the ones that's kind of pushing him into, oh, well, you should start a label. When Suge met DOC, and if you watch the series, you'll see how he met DOC. A little bit, it's talked about a little bit, but he met DOC. That's the flat out what happened. Okay, they met, they become friends, they're hanging out. You know, Suge's, you know, working on him, they're building this relationship. DOC isn't really happy with his situation at Ruthless. Okay, so DOC has Suge come in there, and DOC is cool with Dre because he's writing all his lyrics. They just did their album together. He produced, you know, No One Could Do It Better. You know, It's Funky Enough, all that. So he comes in through, starts coming into NWA through the DOC. And then he takes DOC and Dr. Dre eventually to Dick Griffey, and they're the ones, him and Virgil Roberts are the ones like, hey, you should start a record label. And Virgil Roberts going back is kind of suspicious character. Dick Griffey, through like a, you know, just kind of like the ins and outs of the music business and knowing how corrupt it is, and the way he kind of had his artists and kind of had that big record label, Solar Records in the 80s is kind of suspicious through that. But Virgil Roberts actually goes back to one of his mentors, one of the guys he looked up to was actually in OSS, which is basically Office of Strategic Services, was basically like the CIA before the CIA. That's basically what the department involved into the CIA. And Virgil Roberts actually had connection to the CIA. He actually had security clearance on a federal level because he wanted to work in foreign services. And he actually had connection with the CIA when they did like a voice, I think it was Voice of America, I think is what they call like the like little propaganda network that they have. Like it's kind of like Russia Today for Russia. Like they have stuff today, like where you could watch like videos online, like basically news clips from the like, United States perspective. But it's like, I think it's aimed globally. Well, he was working on stuff like that during like the Vietnam War, like radio, like, obviously before like news and TV was really big, like during the 60s. But he actually went back to UCLA, and he was actually there starting Black Studies program at the same time where they were recruiting people, and certain people that they recruited who was also Black Panthers ended up being a part of the FBI operation, which I don't know if he actually had connections to that or not. I'm not going to say he did. He probably didn't. But some of the people that he recruited as part of this Black Studies program were certain Black Panthers who would have been related to Black Studies at UCLA because they were Black and they were at UCLA and they were pro-Black and they're part of the Panther movement. Who were part of, if you watch the video, part 2, where it mentions the 1969 shooting, UCLA shooting, Bunchy Carter and stuff like that, where Geronimo Pratt actually came in through them guys too, but he wasn't involved. I don't think he didn't get shot and killed like the other 2 guys did. But that actually happened as part of where Virgil Roberts was there. But later he went on entertainment, and he ended up, you know, kind of working his way back into, like, funnily enough, worked his way back into, you know, Black culture and back into the record industry for being a lawyer and eventually president of Solar. Okay. And when the DOC and Dr. Dre and Suge went there, they're like, start your own record label. Roger Roberts was actually the one who drew up originally the plans for what was called Future Shock. And eventually that came in at Death Row. Dick Griffey and Roger Roberts pulling from one side. The other side was Kenner and Harry O, which was what eventually became Death Row, and they had the opening party and stuff like that. That was kind of happening on separate ends on Suge. And obviously we all know what eventually happened. Dr. Dre left. But Jerry Heller originally, Tommy Mottola, Hank Caldwell. Hank Caldwell was actually the original ones. If you remember the Eazy song, Dre Day meant Eazy's payday. When they were originally working this deal to get Eazy, he paid for whoever Dr. Dre went to after they did the RICO lawsuit that eventually got Sony to drop the deal. But originally when they was actually working for Sony before, like the incidents and stuff like that, Hank Caldwell was actually working a deal with Jerry Heller. Okay. After that, Jerry Heller took the deal to other people on like Warner and stuff like that. They kind of stepped back, say, hey, we don't want to mess with it either. But Interscope, okay, Jimmy Iovine, Ted Field, Sean McLean, Tom Wiley are all key figures in this. Tom Wiley's the dude who signed Tupac. Ted Field was the guy who put up the money for the Interscope, along with Atlantic Records, who Doug Morris actually skated from. Basically, he was on Atlantic. He got a high position at Warner during the controversy. Then when MCA eventually bought it, he was on MCA when they eventually bought the shares back from Interscope. Because originally what happened was Warner sold their shares back to Ted Field and Jimmy Iovine, okay, for a low ball. Or actually, yeah, for a low amount, basically. They sold it back. Like, so they bought it at a low price. Like, it might have been like 100-something million, but it was worth 200. Like, the company was valued at like 400 or something like that. So they sold it for that low ball. But eventually sold it back to MCA. When MCA bought it, they bought it for the 200 like value, the appraised value, and so they made a little bang off of that. And then Edgar Bronfman ended up being the one who ended up on the big scale buying parts of the MCA, which eventually became Universal, from like the key players, whatever. It might have been a Japanese type company at that time. He ended up doing that big deal where Seagram came in and actually owned it after that. So that's all stuff you really can look into on this. But back to it, okay. So Dr. Dre's on the label. He gets ripped off the label. Okay. Brian Turner, Priority. He's originally the one from Ice Cube, right? Ice Cube went from Ruthless, which was a label that Priority was distributing, to Priority, and Brian Turner was part. So they was already like basically the main initial objective was to rip apart Ruthless Records, and that's basically what they did. At the end of the day, Eazy-E was left with Above the Law himself. That was it. They took Michelle, they took DOC, they took Dr. Dre, they took Ice Cube, they took basically the entirety of the label besides Eazy and Above the Law, and he built it up from that again, and he got it all the way up to the point where if you see Relativity in there, where he had Bone Thugs, he had himself, he had BG Knockout and Dresta, he had when Bone Thugs and Harmony came, and it was really blowing up again, he went and met Ice Cube in New York, where he was doing the deal for Priority. That's before he got sick. He was actually working a deal, not Priority, but with Relativity before he got sick. And then Dre actually was all connecting. He was about to get NWA back together. So he was about to get NWA back together. He had Bone Thugs. He had himself. He had, Dresta and BG Knockout. They was about to be legit again. And he was about to be legit. You never know what could have happened if he didn't die with Tupac. Right? Because Pac was in prison at the time. he actually went to prison around literally right in the same pocket as where Eazy died. You know, like almost like strategically, like Eazy's out the way. Let's move on to the next one. Pac. He got shot at Quad Studios. Trial. The sentencing came. He went to prison. He was in prison. Okay. During this time, if you listen, also was the time, which we're gonna pop down a little bit, where right way security actually became involved in death row, which if you watch the video closely, you'll hear Jimmy Iovine say that he actually recommended it. And if you watch other sources or listen to other sources, you'll know, or if you listen to Reggie Wright in his own words, he admired Jimmy Iovine. They had a friendship. So speculation leads one to believe that Reggie Wright Jr., Jimmy Iovine, or Reggie Wright Sr. probably, and Jimmy Iovine had a certain type of relationship. And Jimmy Iovine was encouraging them to get on board. And they got on board. And that was the other entity. The other entity on board was David Kenner. Okay. David Kenner was a criminal lawyer for a lot of people in crime. If you look at the West Coast organized, under where it says organized crime, and you see West Coast, you'll see Ricardo Crockett, Harry-O, obviously. Well, Harry-O, and you look at Pat Johnson, they were actually, Kenner was their lawyer. He was a lawyer for a lot of these figures. He was a lawyer for a lot of these organized crime figures. So he had connections. Also, if you look at this list, you'll see Keefe D and Orlando Anderson under there. Well, because Keefe D was part of that organized crime, selling drugs during these areas underneath these type people, like Pat Johnson. Okay. So, I mean, this whole board is really connected to people. But let me just go back a little bit to Eazy-E. Okay. And this whole thing, like I said, is going to connect. Let's look at this Motown thing where it says Clarence Avant. Okay. Well, under Clarence Avant, you're going to see two important names. Tamika Woods Wright. The lady who married Eazy right before he died, and Ron Sweeney. Ron Sweeney. Oh, yeah, that's the lawyer who wrote up all this stuff about Eazy having AIDS and all the other stuff before he died. He's the one who just basically came in with her right before he died. Okay. If you look down here, you'll see Jewish Defense League, Mike Klein. He was the one that was hired to deal with Suge Knight. Well, he was a Mossad guy, which is like basically, you know, an intelligent CIA version for Israel. Okay. And he was part of the Jewish Defense League, which is basically kind of like, you know, a political type organization. It was kind of more like a terrorist type organization. Almost, basically, even. They got accused of certain crimes, you know, certain like terrorist type crimes, bombings and stuff like that, killings, assassinations and stuff like that. Okay. Well, Mike Klein was part of that. And Mike Klein was actually there, one of the people there with these other people, and was actually one of the ones that was trying to basically kind of draw up a divide between Jerry and Eazy during this time. Okay. But Clarence Avant is a key figure, and there's a documentary out on him now where you could actually watch this video and you could see his connections, admittedly, to organized crime going back. So he has connection to organized crime. Lou Wasserman, he was connected to, I think it was Sidney Korshak or something like that. And there was another dude who was directly linked, which I'll post this since I don't remember the names, but I'll post the link to who I'm talking about. Was a guy who was actually Clarence Avant's connect into the industry originally, right? And then Clarence Avant has connections to Diddy, he has connections to Andre Harrell, who actually after Uptown worked for Motown. He has connections to all these people in the industry. He's basically, they called him like the godfather of the industry, basically. It was Clarence Avant. And Clarence Avant was at Motown at the time where these people was working there as lawyers and whatever Tamika did, you know, and they drove us right back on to Eazy. And the Nation of Islam, Fruit of Islam, political organization, just like the Jewish Defense League type of organization, was connected to the Eazy. And it was connected, if you read some of the FBI paperwork, it was actually connected to Pac as well, through the extortion scheme and through protection schemes for the Jewish Defense League as well. And their names are mentioned in the FBI report. But the Nation of Islam was there, you know, at the hospital and at, you know, his residence, basically providing security. And I think they probably offered Tupac security as well. And it was also a guy, so supposedly, you know, when they mentioned the Muhammad guy, who they say, you know, the Muslim looking guy with the bow tie from the Biggie assassination. So there's connections like all across the board. But basically, when Eazy died, the main thing that I'd have people look up is a guy's name, Jack Ruby. Okay? That's it. Look up Jack Ruby. Look at who he was. Look at how he died. And then look up. Well, I'm not even going to tell you to look that up. Actually, yeah. Look up Me and Lee. Me and Lee and the assassination of JFK. Okay. Just look that up. And there's a lady who worked in cancer research at this time. Afterwards, disappeared, lived normal life. Until later, she came out and wrote a book. Was basically the girlfriend of Lee Harvey Oswald. Lee Harvey Oswald was the one who said, I'm a patsy when they arrested him for killing JFK, when that whole conspiracy went down. Okay. Jack Ruby was the guy who got shot, or who actually shot Oswald when he was transporting him. When the police was transporting him, he died in police custody, got shot. Jack Ruby got arrested. Jack Ruby in prison, or in, you know, awaiting trial, jail, got cancer. Cancer was all throughout his body. Well, guess what they was working on for part of the cancer research when the lady who was basically, you know, with Oswald at the time. They was working on a CIA assassination weapon to inject people and give them cancer. Okay? And look at Jack Ruby, you know, how he died, how quickly he died, the time frame. Then look at Eazy-E. Look at some of the symptoms. Look at where it affected their bodies. Look at the type of surgeries that take place when you have those type of complications. Look at that stuff. Look, look at the time frame. It all fits. It all fits that if Eazy-E was assassinated. Also look at the injection thing. You could inject people, but with what? Can you really inject someone with HIV and they die? No. No. If you inject someone with HIV, and you could look up videos on this, or if you give someone HIV, they're going to live for a long time. Okay. No one went back in 1988, or not even 88, heck, it had been even before that, maybe even, to inject Eazy-E with the foresight that he's going to die in 1995, just as NWA is about to get back together, just as Bone Thugs and Harmony is getting huge, just as Tupac is being set up to go to jail, just as, you know, Dr. Dre is being manipulated to go back to a different label, and Tupac's about to die, and Biggie's about to die, and all these other people are about to start rising up in the industry, and Eazy-E, who was basically one of the smartest dudes, one of the original businessmen in the industry, dies. They didn't plan it that far ahead for an assassination to happen. They didn't give someone AIDS or HIV that far back and for it to grow into AIDS by that point. And there's also, if you want to look it up, theories about, you know, conspiracy about HIV in general, but I'm not going to get into that because that's not really, like, that's shaky ground, you know, that's not settled science really, as far as the people who claim, you know, things about HIV and stuff. I'm not getting into that. But you could look up other stories about, in Cuba, there was this group, I think they called them like, I forget what they called them, crazies, or There's a group of basically like rocker, like type, metal type guys, like kind of like, counterculture type, crazy, you know, uh, individuals that end up partying a lot, um, doing drugs and stuff like that. That ended up being part of this community where they all had HIV, and certain individuals were giving themselves HIV to basically join this type of community. Okay. So they were literally, injected themselves or whatever you want to say. Didn't work like that. But what was the time frame on the scientifically when they were developing the cancer drug to give someone cancer? A month. How much time passed between where Eazy-E went from symptoms of, just the bronchitis he always had to a severe cough in the hospital to dead? Roughly a month. From where it was complications of serious symptoms to where he had to basically be, put on, machines and stuff like that. It was roughly within a month that he died. Could it have been cancer? Could it have been something like that? I think it could have been. I'm not saying that's what it was. I'm just saying that that's the type of stuff you got to look into. And what was the point, though? Okay, that's something you have to get out of the way. What was the point of killing Eazy-E? Well, like I said, you got these other individuals with record companies, with distribution networks, who want these artists. They already took Dr. Dre, Michel'le, the DOC, Snoop. Even if you want to look at the people under that, Snoop, Warren G, all these people could have been signed to Ruthless. All of them. All the major names. Pac could have eventually went to Ruthless. Heck, Biggie could have went to freaking Ruthless. It could have been so poppin'. Everybody could have wanted to go there. It could have been so poppin' that it could have got a distribution, had its own distribution. It could have been, you saw how big Death Row got. Well, if Death Row got that big, Ruthless already had other people there. I'd say smarter business people there. If you want to look at, I think Eazy and Jerry was basically smarter business people than David Kenner and Jimmy Iovine and Suge Knight combined. They could have blown that thing up pretty sizably to be probably one of the largest, record companies eventually, competing with the big three. They really could have. And Eazy-E was into, back then he was into stuff that was so far ahead of his time that people really weren't messing with until later on. I wouldn't have been surprised if, Beats by Dre, if they weren't already doing speakers and headphones already well before Jimmy Iovine thought of that stuff years later, and where they did the Beats headphones. They probably would have did that stuff in the 90s if it was Eazy and Dre and all these people would have stayed on Ruthless. But then he built his label back up, which they probably didn't think was going to happen. A lot of people probably, most 99.9% of people aren't built like that. I can't say that. Most people, I'll just say most people, if they're on, a specific level and you take them back basically to nothing, most people are going to say, oh, just give me something average. Again, most people are going to say, I'll just accept having my little artist. I'll sell my label. I'll integrate to this mainstream culture and, just give me my, millions, but I ain't going for the big bag again. Just let me live and I'll be fine. Nah, Eazy-E was going back and, with hits. He was getting everybody back together. He's doing Bone Thugs. Freaking, the At Band Clan. will.i.am. You know how big they got. With will.i.am and Black Eyed Peas, they got huge. He had them signed. He had will.i.am signed. That could have been gigantic. He would have been pop music. He already did pop music back with JJ Fad. Really. So, could have been gigantic. So that's that point. Okay, so Eazy-E's out of the way now. Now they move on to Pac. You got Kenner in there, lawyer, controlling things, basically running a label. Harry O got pushed out the picture. Suge's there, but what could Suge? Who else does Suge have? He has basically just, his only really thing he has is the Mob Rouge security. But he has to worry about them extorting him. He has to worry about them, testing his credibility. He has to worry about giving them money. He has to worry about, maintaining a kind of a street image with them. Really everything. He doesn't really have anybody besides basically himself. And maybe, there's a couple of dudes who remain loyal to him Buntry, and them type of dudes. Okay, who are really loyal with them and riding with them. Reggie Wright Jr. comes in. He has his right way security. I mean, obviously Snoop has his crew, and you know what we could say about Snoop as far as what type of agent stuff he did. I'll get into that actually right now. Tupac, for most of his career, if you watch the videos, was doing conscious type music. He was doing conscious type music. Even when he was doing street type stuff, it was street conscious type stuff. He was doing it with a specific agenda, to uplift black people. He wasn't doing songs like Gin and Juice. He wasn't doing songs like Murder Was the Case. Basically, what happened with Snoop, you could say they got someone murdered. Basically, a blood sacrifice to get Snoop into the game. Listen to Murder Was the Case. That's literally what he's talking about, selling his soul. He went out, he killed this dude. He had a murder case. Now he's in there. He sold his soul. That's basically what this Murder Was the Case song was about. His murder case was about a murder case. His song was about selling your soul to the devil. That's pretty much all you need to know. That's it. They admitted to it in the song. I mean, it's not, you don't gotta get to really deep in the weeds there. So then you got this guy Snoop there, who's basically, there's dual goals there. Him and Dre, Snoop was the biggest artist. Pac eventually became, the biggest artist once he signed with Death Row. But, before that, he was a big artist. He was especially in acting. But Snoop was like one of the biggest artists, as far as on the Chronic, as far as Doggy Style, as far as the album sales. Before Tupac really went to jail, and then he blew up with Me Against the World, and he blew up with All Eyes on Me. Snoop was that original guy that they kind of used to spread that negative type music, that lack of a positive type music that Pac was, pushing. Pac was trying to push. Okay. Notice the gangster rap controversy. Who did the gangster rap controversy target? Pac. Who did a song called 187 on Undercover Cop? Snoop and Dre. That was the original Death Row song. That was the original song before there was a Death Row. You'll see in the video the section that covers that. That's part of the series that covers that. You'll see the back of the deep cover, like credits. You'll see Hank Caldwell's name. You'll see Sony there. You'll see special thanks to Dick Griffey and Virgil Roberts. Why? Because they were already working to get Dre off the label Ruthless before Death Row was even done. Before they could even put Death Row on there. When it was launching a label that was done with Solar, that was done with Sony. That soundtrack was with all with Death Row artists on there. Okay? And that's where Jerry Heller and Eazy, like I said, worked. That's where John McClane's name comes in. Because what originally happened was when Sony dropped the label, they had to go somewhere else. Jimmy Iovine and John McClane was working together at Interscope, but Dick Griffey knew, I think, John McClane Sr. or something like that, right? So eventually, somehow, they get John McClane to kind of listen to the Chronic or whatever. He goes to Jimmy Iovine. So they have this little connection. And Jimmy Iovine listens to it. Suge and them go up and meet Jimmy Iovine. Then Jimmy Iovine calls Jerry and Eazy. It's like, hey, I don't think that, Dr. Dre really wants to be on the label, which they already knew that. Okay. Because they already had a conversations like that. Okay. Because originally Dr. Dre could have stayed on the label. There was no benefit to anybody but Kenner, Interscope, Warner, all these other people for Dr. Dre to leave. Dre basically left with nothing to go to Interscope, and he had to rebuild all that from there. He basically got his payout at the end. He did his job. He sold out like he was supposed to. They paid him back in the end. That's what Dre got, a payback. After they already screwed everybody else over and killed Pac, killed Eazy. Dre got the payback. He got the money that was left over. Once they was able to do the thing with 2001 Chronic. And once he was able to basically get Eminem and 50 Cent. Okay, but beyond that, the next group of people that they pushed up on this is why it all connects. The next group of people that they pushed up on with this was Puffy and Biggie. Okay. Biggie was the next Snoop. Okay. Eventually this became Jay-Z once Biggie died. That's why Pac was mad. Okay? Listen to Pac's interviews. He knew what they were scheming with Biggie. Okay? He knew what Puffy was doing. He knew what those dudes was doing. Clive Davis, who eventually did the deal with Bad Boy. Okay? He knew their scheme. Pac did. They tried to get Pac out of the way so Biggie could blow up. And Biggie went along with it. That's why he was mad. Listen to the type of music Biggie did. Okay? Look what Pac did for Biggie to get Biggie on. Or like they blow him up to get him love in the streets. What he taught him, what he put down for him. Biggie was supposed to be thug life. You ever hear Biggie missing? Yeah, if you didn't have that interview of dudes saying, in these rare interviews, Biggie's supposed to be thug life. You think anybody would ever know what Biggie was supposed to be thug life? I don't know one famous Biggie line about thug life or any type of social movement in all of his records. None of them. But nonetheless, Biggie was supposed to be thug life. All of a sudden, he blows up. Nothing about it. Nothing about Pac. I wouldn't even know Biggie and Pac was even cool if you didn't have the interview where they mention it. Biggie didn't big up Pac a lot in his music. I'm like, maybe at all. You would never know. He didn't treat him like a big homie or nothing. That's why Pac was mad. And also, you had the incident go down the East Coast. Haitian Jack. They meet. Haitian Jack does what? Sets him up for the rape. Let's be honest, what happened? You could argue about the situation where he didn't set him up, not set him up, whatever happened. Haitian Jack had him set up. He outs him as an agent. You can get, whatever you want to about that. You got to be honest about the situation. Comes to New York, stays in New York, hangs out with Jack. All of a sudden, he's up for a rape charge. All of a sudden, after the rape charge, Jack introduced him to Jimmy Henchman. He's on his way to the studio and gets shot at Quad Studio. He's hanging out with Jack the whole time. He's hanging out with Little Sean, basically, who was the guy he's supposed to do the song with. What Little Sean actually talks about in the videos that I post in one of the sections about, riding along with them, seeing him with the gun. So Pac's carrying a gun. Haitian Jack, who introduced him to the streets know he's carrying a gun. They have to know he's carrying a gun. Okay. So you're going to send two gunmen, and they already know what kind of person Pac is. So you're going to send two gunmen in there to rob him. Come on, how much sense does that make? You know what's going to happen. You know you're going to go in there and try to rob Pac. He got his homies there. Which I'm not going to get into whether or not Stretch or all these other people, I'm not going to get into that. Who was involved, what they was talking about. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to get into the Dexter Isaac stuff. I don't believe, he was maybe one of the people. I don't know. I don't care. All I know is that they went in there to do a botched robbery, assassination attempt. Whether they want to kill him or basically, shoot him up so bad that he's out of the game. He's shot in the head twice, shot in the leg, groin area, hand or whatever. I mean, he was shot twice in the head and then beat. You would think they either thought he was dead or they thought, we can't put so much of a clip into him where it doesn't look like it's a robbery attempt, where it looks like we just was in there to murder him. He's too famous of a figure. Walks outside, they see the police there. It's the first thing that his homie, when he walks outside, sees the police. Guys are disappeared. No one saw what happened. No one caught the guys. There was never no trial. Nothing. Nobody. I mean, for all this stuff. For Tupac's assassination, for Eazy-E's, no investigations, nothing. Small little FBI investigations talking about other stuff, nothing. Nothing ever came of it. Biggie's, nothing. Nothing. Okay? That's what it is. Okay? He was set up. Twice. Didn't kill him. Went to prison. Then they did what? There was their moves. Okay? The next part of the gangster rap controversy. But let's go back to the beginning. Who was targeted? Who was targeted in the gangster rap? Pac. Pac was targeted. Running from the Police. Biggie. Pac song. Great song. One of my favorite songs. Pac did. One of my favorite songs that Biggie did. They did together. Two of the biggest artists. Why wasn't that one of Tupac's albums? Because they weren't letting anybody do songs about police like that, like Pac was doing. But guess who did one? 187 Undercover Cop. Cop Killer. What was that about? Huh? That was a joke. A metal band, a metal rock band, does a song. What does it have to do with rap music? What does it have to do with rap music? Because Ice-T's a rapper. He's a rapper a long time ago. He wasn't popping, then like he was maybe a little bit earlier. And he does a metal song with a metal band, basically. A rock type thrash. What do they call it? I forget what they call that type of rock, but he does that type of rock record. That's not a rap record. Why is that a gangster rap controversy? Why is that part of a gangster rap controversy? It's not rap. Pac was rapping. Pac was talking about that stuff on his records. And then what happens to Ice-T? Basically nothing. Okay? He like voluntarily takes the album down with Warner. Like voluntarily. Okay? And I like to point to all these other record labels like they was really worried about that. Not really. Warner was basically the only label that was getting hit with this. That's why I said the other two labels were trying to take him down a notch. Okay? The police already knew about the situation. A Texas police organization already knew about that record before the controversy really even blew up. Okay? What happened in Texas? That's where the kid, the black kid, 19-year-old, goes, shoots the trooper, and they blame that shooting on Pac. The Ray Howard incident. Okay? They blame that shooting on Pac. They link it back to Pac. The cop killer controversy, they link back to Pac. From a kid driving a stolen car. He must have stole the CD too, or he must have just rocking around with in a stolen car, bringing the CDs in there for whatever reason. And he's driving around, listening to Apocalypse Now. And in his head, he's thinking, man, what, I gotta go kill a cop. He must have thought so hard that the cop was like, man, the cop's spidey senses must have went off. And it's like, oh, I gotta pull this guy over right now because he's listening to Tupac. And I gotta go get shot. I mean, come on. The kid got pulled over. Tupac probably had nothing to do with it. Nothing at all. They just brought it up in the trial to get it in the public sphere, to blame gangster rap and what they call anti-cop lyrics, but it's just political black activist lyrics. To demote it, to censor it, and to target Pac. That's all that it was. And then what happened next? Okay. So we fast forward. Okay. Because they're not really going after gangster rap. Gangster rap is gigantic. It's making them tons of money. They ain't have no interest in going after that. We saw what happened later on. I mean, we don't even talk about that anymore. Rap is so vile. Like today, it was so vile. I mean, there's so many different. I mean, we barely talk about that type of stuff today. It doesn't matter what they talk about, but they want to talk about the cop thing back then with regard to Pac. But like I said, they didn't mention it with Snoop. They didn't mention it with Dre. They didn't mention the type of music they was doing until what was coming up. That's the C. Dolores Tucker stuff. Okay, that was a little bit later. Like it was back to back, but it was a little bit later. And that is when Warner wanted to go do the deal to buy Death Row, basically. Okay, and where Kenner, if you watch the Defiant ones, where Kenner, Suge, and Jimmy Iovine do the RICO thing against the label to prevent them from doing that. Because what they're already scheming to do, what you already have to know that they're scheming to do, is do a trade between Pac and Dre. And given that Dre was the main character, I'm going to tell you what, Dre was the main dude the entire time. Where Dre went, the money went. He was on Ruthless and the bass popping. He's on Death Row, Death Row's popping. Okay? They just put his name on stuff. He wasn't even doing most of the beats. Okay? You'll see that. I mean, Doggy Style, there was other dudes doing the beats. Chronic, Warren G was working on pretty much the whole album as well. He don't get any credit for that. He's working on every single song basically. Picking samples, picking drum sounds, saying, oh yeah, that sounds good. That's hot. What can you do with this? What can you do with that? Doesn't matter who from the crew you're really even looking at. Daz, they're all doing that stuff, right? Okay? So move on. Okay. Dre is basically doing a trade. At the beginning of it, once they get Warner basically out of the picture, that's basically what they wanted to do. Okay, and if you look at the game politically. What are we looking at politically? Politically, Warner needed to get the heat off of them so they could do their merger deal with Turner. They wanted to buy Turner, which is basically like CNN and stuff like that, right? They couldn't do that with this big cloud, so they eventually backed off and they sold the shares undervalued back to Jimmy Iovine and Ted Field, who then sold it to MCA. Doug Morris was on Warner at that time. Okay, he got fired from Warner or stepped down or whatever you want to say. He resigned, whatever. He's out. Goes to MCA. Goes to MCA, the same label that buys back the shares that just got sold. So it was like, I'm pretty sure it was like 110, 114 million versus 200 million. They made a little bank on that. Okay, they made money basically by getting the shares sold back to them and by selling them back to MCA. They profited. And the MCA is important because if you go back in time, MCA, like I said, these people right here, Clarence Avon and stuff like that, was connected to Lou Wasserman through some other people, which I'll post their names and stuff like that. But MCA, there's a connection between MCA, Ronald Reagan, and the mob. There's a book done on it like during the 80s. Okay, there was mob connections. There was the whole NBC like special like nighttime like special on this about the connections between MCA and mob figures. Okay, and then with connections to Ronald Reagan. Well, who did Ronald Reagan have connections to? Bush, yes. Dole, Clinton, and all them people. Yeah, they all had connections through federal agencies, through the FBI, CIA. Who was doing what at the same time that all this was going on? Well, the FBI ran the COINTELPRO operations against the Black Panthers. Who was part of that? Oh yeah, Tupac's family. Afeni Shakur, Yasmin Fula, Mutulu Shakur. If you want to look at the Black Liberation Army and stuff like that, Assata Shakur, all his family was targeted in these COINTELPRO operations and police operations. Okay, they run these same operations to do what? Now, I'll tell you what. It was because Tupac was doing gang organizing. His main objective, which was, and this is why they targeted Pac, basically. His main objective in music, if you listen to all his later interviews, he was going to get enough power and enough influence to start affecting gangs into organizing and gangs into politics. And he was also doing this with ideas overall about society that were totally opposed to what the people in power wanted to do. Totally opposed. Everything he was saying, everything that they came, that kind of be used like as like a little maneuver against the Black community. I mean, he was already like, game on it, up on it, doing his work as far as, intellectually, schooling people. And the FBI had, this thing called the Joint Task Force type things, okay? Okay. The LA riots happened, okay? The Watts Treaty happened right before the LA riots. They were already working to try to figure out how, like, I think they use that like as a front. Okay, we got these LA riots here, but what we really want to do is set up a task force to try to encourage the gang violence and try to keep the destabilization of the Black community that we started with COINTELPRO, that we started with the war on drugs, that we started with, and that's the connection back to the people in the streets selling the drugs that, Kenner was connected to. The people who, Harry O was connected to, Ricardo Crockett was connected to, that, Suge was connected through to the people he grew up with, and Keefe D and all the other people. That was the Iran-Contra scandal, where Reagan, like I said, had connections to MCA and had connections to the mob, had connections to the CIA through this Contra scandal, where they were allowing the Contras to sell drugs back into the United States so they could make money to oppose communism in South America, in Nicaragua, and wherever they was at. That's what they was doing. They put the drugs into the communities. They allowed it to overflow into the communities because it served two purposes. One, it made them money, street money, illegal money that they could take. Two, it destabilized the crap out of the communities that they wanted to destabilize. It caused gang violence. It caused gang culture that was negative, that was that destroyed the community, that destroyed families, that destroyed the culture, that allowed for mass incarcerations, but caused even making more money. They did that on purpose. Okay? And it's all connected because It happened through Reagan, happened through Bush. Okay. It continued through Clinton. Okay. The FBI and CIA was parts of that. And how were they getting the drugs in there? Through those drug dealers. Okay. Through those drug dealers. The Contra thing has this connection a little bit more through Rick Ross, who's not on here, but he was cellmates with Michael Harris. But you can look at Rick Ross talks about the Iran Contra stuff all the time, because one of his connects was part of that, Blandone or whatever his name was. Okay. And eventually, through this, you got at Compton PD, you got Reggie Wright Sr., okay, you got Brennan, and you got Ladd, who were the ones that after the Pac assassination was part of basically certain encouragement of the Lander Anderson theory. They were behind, kind of sort of making up the thing about the Trayvon Lane chain snatching incident and all the other stories, along with Reggie Wright Jr. They were part of, they do interviews and stuff. They did a live TV interview and stuff like that where they push specific theory. And you look at the LAPD, obviously, was involved in this as well. Through, like I said, the LA riots, through the Joint Task Force. These people with Compton PD, certain other PDs, and again, the LAPD was working through right-way security. So all these people were connected through right-way security on death row. Death row was basically our front organization, if you really think about it. It was our front organization for the drug trafficking, for the destabilization of the black community, for pretty much all their objectives. It worked like that throughout the entire time. Now, I don't think Suge wanted to do that. I think Suge had literally probably the exact opposite idea in mind. But that's what happened. He got used, and he eventually got sent to jail. He got set up, and it crashed the whole thing. Once Dr. Dre was gone, once the ball was gone, they crashed the whole thing. Okay, I'm pretty sure they was aware of this the entire time. Because, like I said, this all connects back, like I said, through these drug dealers, through they were targeting, they were setting up, they were making money off of, they were working in connection with the FBI and CIA to destabilize the communities, and Pac was working to do what? Stabilize them and do literally, like I said, what? The exact opposite of what they were trying to do. He was the biggest threat, public enemy number one the entire time. Besides him, between him and Eazy, from Eazy through a business perspective, Pac through organizing a social conscious perspective, they were the biggest enemies, and they got rid of both of them quick. Pac wasn't even in the game like 5 years. Okay, that's how it draws back. Okay, so Pac's sitting there in jail, right? They're not letting him out of jail. They're not giving him any of his money. They're not really helping him, this with this or that. They are communicating with him. Eventually, he sets up the deal. He does the deal, through Kenner to go to with Suge to go to death row to leave. And like I said, he goes to death row. He probably even thinks he's doing records with Dre, because I think H and Gregory mentions this. Like, oh, he thought he was doing records with Dre. He was going to go to death row. No, they probably already knew at this point that was not going to happen. They knew it wasn't going to happen. Okay. At that point, they had to know that Dr. Dre was already going to leave, because they already planned kind of like the buying of the stocks. Like, that literally happened like right back to back. Like, if you look at it, like Tupac getting signed, the selling of the shares back to Jimmy Iovine. This is like a thing to look at. Look at the timeline here. They sold the shares. Pac was in prison. They sold the shares. The shares get sold back to MCA. Dr. Dre goes, when Dr. Dre goes back to from death row to Interscope, MCA buys the shares. I mean, it's like right all back to back to back. And then Edgar Barfman comes in and he buys, up, the thing, and it becomes Universal and all this other stuff. It's like right back to back to back, like all in the same time frame, like they planned it. And then you look at what happens, what starts to happen with Puffy, and like I say, if you're head of a record label, and the incident that really sticks out is the Big Jake incident at the Jermaine Dupri party, where Big Jake is with Suge, and he gets shot by that. Well, Anthony, I think they say that's who people allegedly say he got shot by. Was Puffy's bodyguard, Wolf. Okay, who lets that go on? Like if that happened on if you're a control of a record label or you just signed it, like that's something right there that like you're thinking about not doing business with these people again. If that something like that happens, right? And Puffy's aware it is. He's mad aware it is. Okay. But nothing happens to Puffy during this time. Okay. And Puffy was there, right? Puffy did it. Biggie's the artist. Why is Puffy protected in this? Like, why throughout all this, nothing happened to Puffy? Why is it that, like Suge said, why is it that every snitch and their freaking mom could come out and say Puffy was involved in Biggie's assassination or Tupac's assassination or something? Puffy knew something. He was involved in Big Jake. He's involved in something. He was involved in, the shooting in the clubs and all this other stuff. All this stuff could come back Puffy, and like nothing happens. I mean, Pac probably spent more time in prison than Puffy, and Pac ain't do nothing. He paid fines and stuff, right? He got a fight with the Hughes brothers. Like, the rest of the stuff is him getting shot at. Like, the rest of his career is him getting shot or getting shot at. And, but he's in prison for like almost a year or half a year, whatever long. A little bit more than that in solitary confinement. And can't wait to get out, to sign with Death Row, right? But Puffy can do all this stuff throughout his entire career and nothing happens. All he keeps happening with Puffy is artists go to his label. They're treated like crap. They try to leave. They're blackballed from the industry. Or they're killed. Or they freaking join some type of other, religious organization or something like that. All these talented dudes who are like, man, what happened to that guy? Or man, that guy could have been dope. Or man, that was dope then, but what happened? Or like Biggie and Die. And Puffy's the main character in all of this. But he gets deals from Clive Davis. He gets deals from Jimmy Iovine. He gets deals from Doug Morris and all these people. It's all connected. The money is all connected. Look at the top people in rap. Dre. Puffy. Okay? They're both always at the top of the billionaire. Like, they're almost in a billionaires club, from the rap related Forbes list. All the time. Okay? And they come out of the same circle of people. Okay? That's what happened. So Pac does what? He signs with Death Row. With David Kenner. He goes there. David Kenner's there now. He's the connection through what? He's the connection back to these street people. He's the connection back to these executives. He's like an intermediary, right? That's why it says intermediary right here. Okay? Who else is there? Right with security. What's he an intermediary between Reggie Wright Jr.? Through these police organizations and through these government organizations, obviously integrated through the police. So there's your intermediary to the executives, the business side, the private sector side, the capitalist, private sector versus capitalist, imperialist, government, state, entities, law enforcement, police intelligence. They're connected all in the Death Row right here. And Pac's in the middle of it. And then you have specific people who like Snoop. Snoop is like the most obvious agent, okay? So he's on this label now. Pac is. Him and Suge, partners. Snoop has his side of the label. You got the mob Pyru security, okay? So what happens next? You have the Big Jake. Well, the first thing that happens is that there's obviously the Quad Studio shooting. And Pac feels a certain kind of way about it, which already explained why he really didn't like Biggie. Okay? They were using Puffy and they were using Biggie to blow Biggie up to take Pac's spot while he was in jail, to get him out of the game. They already tried to censor his music. They already had him in jail. They already had him shot at multiple times. You could look at the video to part 2 where you can see all the assassination attempts, the connection to COINTELPRO, how they target certain people. They did it all to him. He was already being targeted at this point. He was in jail. Now they needed the guy to go out there who wasn't going to do any type of positive music, and that was Biggie. Snoop, Biggie. Then who was it after that? Jay-Z and Puffy. It was Jay-Z mainly. Pac was the dual threat. Pac did the uplifting music, and he did music that sold, and was popular. Okay? And he was using that as a tool. They had to get rid of him, and that's eventually what they did. The first incident was that Quad Studio. Then he's in prison. Then Suge was trying to get on his good side. Suge goes and starts beefing with Puffy. Okay? while he's still in prison and stuff like that, before he even really even gets out, they have the Big Jake incident where they had the first Source Awards, and after the Source Awards, him and Puffy get an altercation. Then later at the Jermaine Dupri party, Big Jake gets shot. Okay, then you start fast forwarding a little bit. You know, they have their little altercations, the East Coast, West Coast thing. We're in the magazine, they put it up. You know, East Coast, West Coast, you know, Pac's out, he's riding, he's doing these diss songs. Well, actually, yeah, go back a little bit farther than that, to the first diss song. Okay, this is crazy, right? Because originally they did the Who Shot Ya thing, right? Which is a little bit more suspicious than I think a lot of people give credit for. Like, how did they already have this song planned out? Because some people say, oh, it was recorded before that. But listen to this song. What are they saying at the song? You know, East Coast, mother, East Coast, East Coast, East Coast, West Coast. They do East Coast, West Coast chants on the song. That's like unprecedented. Before that, if you had a beef, you had like, you know, dude beefing with Compton or something like that. Or dude beefing with like Dre and Eazy beefed on the same coast. Like, he was calling out who you was beefing with. That was the first time on a record where you gotta do saying East Coast, West Coast, who shot you? And we already know who got shot. So who they talk about when they say who shot you? Okay? And they could have very well, when you listen to the original song, you listen to the original version, which I don't even think the original, actually, forget that. When you listen to a version of it, because the original version I don't think ever came out. Because the original version had, if you listen to the dude who produced it, there's a video where he's talking about, and I'll post this up there, okay, where he's talking about Biggie in there talking about Michael Jordan's dad and stuff, you know, I'll leave you leaking or something because he's got killed, right? You know, crazy, like a crazy line. And I was like, oh, no, we can't put this, because they wanted to do it in the Mary J. Blige album, and Puffy keeps saying, oh, no, it's too hard for that. Because Keith Murray already has the thing to the same beat and everything like that on the Mary album, right? So he's doing a little who shot you. But, you know, if you listen to the one thing he said, like says at the song, he says representing something, you know, your Royal Highness or something like that. Okay, something about your Royal Highness representing, you know, whatever, right? Biggie does. But then on the one that come out where they have the East Coast, and then when they say West Coast, you hear Puppy say, aha, no, ha. When they talk about the West Coast, right? But they talk about the East Coast and JM, Junior Mafia, or whatever. They're just saying, you know, their chants on the song. And then you come at the thing, he says, you rewind this. Bad boys behind this. Come on, man. What's that referring? Come on. Like, just try to make the song less suspicious, at least suspicious as possible. You didn't do that, right? You changed the lyrics. You changed all this different type stuff from the original version and put the song out right after Pac goes to prison. After he gets shot at Quad Studio. That is deliberate. The release of the song was deliberate. The changes to the song was deliberate. The East Coast, West Coast chants and stuff on the song was all deliberate. Or the versions that came out later. Okay? So that happens. Pac's mad. Then the beef. Then the Source Awards. Then the Big Jake incident. Then the stuff with the magazines, which we already know. Vibe magazine said they did not want the cover, the heads in the actual magazine, the editors, the chiefs, who usually 90% of the time had this decision to make what the cover is, had executives come in. If you watch, I'm pretty sure they mentioned this in the BET Death Row Chronicles or something like that, where one of the heads of Vibe said, yeah, we didn't want that to be, you know, we wanted to be like, what beef? There's no beef. You know, something like that, to downplay the fact that there was a beef, because there was never any beef between anybody besides Puffy and Big and Pac. A personal little, you know, we kind of know what happened here between us type little thing. And they blew that up into a West Coast, East Coast, where people was getting shot. I mean, come on, bro. Okay, you fast forward. They had these little altercations and stuff like that. They eventually had an altercation where Big Gene says that's when Puffy came back. And basically, he's the prophet now. He makes predictions of the future. None of this was planned out right, but he makes this magical prediction of the future, like, yeah, I don't care if, you know, Big gotta die, if Pac gotta die, if Suge gotta go to jail. Why didn't he say Suge gotta die? Why did he say go to jail? Why does he say this before any of this even happens? I mean, unless Big Gene's lying here, He could be lying. He could be making it up. He could have had his friend who was also there in the conversation who vouched for it. He could be making it up. They could be all making that up. But it's just strange. It's suspicious. Okay? It's suspicious that, you know, in the end of this, Puffy never gets touched. Never gets touched. Never goes, he doesn't go to prison. I mean, Puffy does way worse things in his career than Suge did. Like, you know, Puffy was hitting people in the head with, like, you know, bottles and stuff like that, right? Punching people, carrying cop with guns. I mean, Suge did some things in his career, right? But, you know, some of them was just total myths. Never happened. And some of them was, you know, just slapping people around. Some of them never came to the light of day. Some of the things that, like, oh yeah, you know, stuff went down at death row. But, you know, none of the stuff was reported, really. And nobody pressed charges or anything like that. Besides the one incident with the Stanley brothers where, you know, Suge shoots at the wall and they go straight to the police thing and they get the thing on him. And that's how they get him back in jail. Because the Stanley brothers, instead he's on probation, or when they go and do the little fake fight with the Orlando Anderson, who's nothing but a patsy, and he's standing there, they do the fake fight, right? Okay? You could tell it's staged. I mean, Orlando Anderson doesn't have a scratch on him, you know. You know, BG Knockout says he saw him like the next day, wasn't nothing wrong with him. You know, and just knowing the straights. I mean, knowing him, I mean, there's no way that Pac runs up on him and he Pac what? Come on, man. Right? Because listen to the other story where dude got jumped, right? The Hughes brothers situation. Okay. Right? The Hughes brothers told his part of the story. He said, you know, he picked, you know, Pac up and had him up above his head on the hood of a car or something like that. Something crazy. And then when he was going to punch him, then the dudes came and jumped him. For the Orlando Anderson, we got that video, you know, and like, you know, we don't even see really what happens until they start jumping him. And then it was, you know, changed into morphed into something later where, you know, it was someone tried to take a death row chain at, you know, the mall, you know, weeks earlier or something like that. I remember there's the call between Reggie Wright and Frank Alexander where they're trying to get him to, you know, and he's like, oh, I'm not changing my story. He's like, oh, just tied in what you told us, whatever. And then, you know, whatever, he don't want to come up and, you know, basically he doesn't want to go testify. Basically. Okay, he doesn't want to go testify. And that's later what ended up happening is because of this fight, Suge's up for, you know, his hearing about the probation violation, which it shouldn't be a probation violation because Suge didn't do anything. You watch the video because you watch it 100 times and Suge barely does anything. Like he might kick, maybe. I don't think he even lands. He just like, you know, fake, you know, grabs, you know. I mean, come on, man. Nothing was there. Nothing was there for a violation. But they sent him to jail for like 6 years or something like that. It's ridiculous. I think it was 9 years. He might have served like 5 or something. I forget, but it was ridiculous. It was a staged fight. And that's what happened. Okay? We can see it. So Pac and him is in Vegas at this point. This was after, like, you know, all the other stuff, all the other incidents, the East Coast, West Coast thing kind of at a height. This fake beef. But if you watch any of the videos, you could, I mean, Pac's already doing the One Nation album. He's already trying to squash the beef. He's already working with East Coast artists. He already got on TV multiple times to say there's nothing there. It's just between a couple people. Okay? But they're in Vegas. And I think the simplified version of this is I think Pac went there. I'm just going to say it like this. Pac went there and he knew he was going to die. He knew it was going down. Okay? He just went. Yeah, that's it. No one say anything else. Because the incident in Vegas that people try to focus on it. It's not important. He's already being targeted. He already had assassination attempts. He's already sent to prison. He already had his music being censored. He's already being like, you know, kind of like thrown around and try to be disregarded. They already wanted him out of the game. I mean, if he didn't die in Vegas, he would have died, you know, next week. You know, JFK didn't die in Chicago or whatever. He died in Dallas. Okay, come on. They would have got him. You know, Martin Luther King got, you know, stabbed, you know, before even he got shot. And if they wouldn't have caught him on that balcony at the hotel, they would have got him somewhere else. Come on, man. They would have got it. They want you, they going to get you. Pac knew that. Pac, you know, they said he fired David Kenner and Right Way right before that. He knew what he was doing going to Vegas. He had conversations with people. You could look up the interviews where, you know, he talks about going to Vegas, dead man walking. Okay? But they plan this whole thing out. Vegas, they have Orlando Anderson there as a patsy that gets thrown back in jail. They do the whole little charade, everything. Pac, gets shot somehow. I'm not gonna say how. I'm not gonna make any speculation to this. Okay. No speculation to this. I'm just gonna say he got shot. He went to the hospital. He dies in the hospital. Same thing that happened with Eazy. Eazy, he gets sick. He goes to the hospital. All of a sudden, he's in the hospital. He's dead. He goes to the hospital. People's thinking, he could make it. Gets to the hospital. Even in the case of both Eazy and Pac, they both had doctors coming out and say, he's going to be, he should be able to get past this, whatever. Nope. Takes a turn for the worst, dies, both of them. Dead, died in the hospital. Okay. That was it. That's the end of this. If I find anything, after I watch this video, I need to add, I might do a part 2, but this is a pretty long video. I think I covered just pretty much everything as far as connections between these people. So you can see the main connections. Like I said, it's the street people who were connected through the drugs, through the destabilization of the black community, which was targeting black activists, targeted Pac's family, the activists in the past, the Black Panthers, who Pac was a representative of in the community. They've replacing these black activists through the entertainment industry with these other people, and there's replacing in the entertainment industry certain black individuals, Eazy-E. And you can even add Suge Knight into this, really. I mean, Suge Knight, for all his flaws, I think at the end of the day, if Suge Knight didn't have David Kenner and Virgil Roberts and Dick Griffey and all these other people pulling on him, Jimmy Iovine, Doug Morris, all these, Edgar Brofman, and all these other people, I don't think that at the end of the day, Suge would have been a bad dude. I seriously think that he would have tried to do something to uplift the community the same way Pac wanted to do. I think that's why he loved Pac. I think that's why Pac loved him. I think that's why they was really with each other, all the time hanging out, and why that relationship looked so strong, and why Suge really gets emotional about the situation. Why everybody says that he was that way, because I think that at the end of the day, I think Suge wanted to do something positive. I think that's why they still after Suge. You look at the same entities that's still after Suge. Like I mentioned, Doug Morris. You watch the interview with Geraldo, or I think his name was Rico Suave, the Vlad interview where Vlad is talking about, and Vlad talked about this a couple of different times about how he used to work, and then Universal or whatever had this sign, like if you see this man, if you see Suge, and how he would be escorted, Doug Morris would be escorted back and forth, and all these other people, Suge said they had restraining orders, Puffy or Dr. Dre or whatever had restraining orders against them. I don't know about that, but I do know that they seem to be very worried about Suge, whereas Suge wasn't seem to be as worried, they seem to be, I'm going to say it like this, just like the way Suge said it. They seem to be worried about him like as if they had something to be worried about. Like as if they did something, had a guilty conscience about what they did and about why Suge might want to come after them. And they seem to be coming at Suge. If you want to look at, like I said, originally they set him up, fake fight, goes to jail for a fake fight. And then after that, later on, after he does this long bid, comes back, has the incident with, first with, he had a camera snatching incident. Then you fast forward, he has an incident where he runs over his friend or whatever. And he has in that big SUV, and they're basically coming to try to fight him and kill him or whatever. That's a clear. I mean, you see the dude, you see the video, you see him, what it looks like pull out a gun. You see him in the vehicle trying to punch at Suge. Suge puts the thing in the reverse, backs up, hits the guy. The guy falls. It looks like a gun falls out. He goes forward again. I mean, you have incidents like this, and then you have like all these other just weird incidents where it's just like, I mean, who gets in charge? I mean, like anybody else in that situation, it looked like clear self-defense. It looked like textbook. I mean, and everybody who they talked to, lawyers, even when they had Virgil Roberts, when they had all these people saying, Big U said, he's like, I look like Suge got a good chance to get off of this, and then all of a sudden, nope. I mean, and then you have the One Oak. That's the other incident I was thinking about, the One Oak, where he goes in the club, and I think he might actually got shot multiple times. But in the One Oak incident, he got shot up pretty bad. That looked like a clear assassination attempt to me. So Suge's already been on the block. Like they've been trying to kill him. Okay. So I mean, I think that's pretty much it. I don't really know any other connections that I didn't already discuss at length. But like I said, if there is, and I review this and I edited it down and I see that there's something, I'll come back to it. But anyway, just like the channel, subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, add them, but to the comment section. But if there's anything specific in this video that you want me to talk about, like a specific incident, and that you want me to go back over, please let me know, and I'll cover that in a future video. Thanks.